Hi, I'm Martha Monroe. I teach at the University of Florida, and this is a short video about adaptive management and collaborative adaptive management, and the link between those concepts and environmental education. So imagine a freshwater spring. There's lots of springs in North Florida. These are crystal clear, blue, beautiful little spots where water comes right out of the ground. They're used for recreation, for cultural events, for picnics. People love to visit, swim, fish, canoe, kayak. They also have economic value. People bottle water from the springs and sell them in plastic bottles. They're just used for a lot of things. They're part of the aquifer that is water underneath the ground, and as a result, cities in the nearby area pumping groundwater are actually reducing the level of water that's coming out in the springs. So what we have over time is so many people using the springs that the quality of the water is deteriorating, the quality of the ecosystem rather. There's more algae in the water, there's decreased biodiversity of aquatic organisms, and there's less water coming out as a result. There's also more nutrients coming into the system from farms and from septic tanks and a variety of things. So there's kind of a problem, and the resource agencies that manage these springs want to fix the problem. So those resource management agencies get together and say, what do we do? How do we solve this problem? They pull together scientists and resource managers, and together they figure out what to do. In a highly complex system, they may not know the answer, and it may not be clear. This is a process called adaptive management. In this process, they probably wouldn't say trial and error, but really what they're doing is creating small experiments to try to figure out what to try, and then monitoring the results of those experiments so they can learn, so they can figure out what works and what they should do next. In the image that you're looking at now, you can see how the cycle of adaptive management works, from a planning phase through an implementation phase, a monitoring phase, and then that little line through the middle takes you right back to the implementation part, so that if they find something that needs to be tweaked or changed, they can say, oh, let's try this experiment instead, and again monitor that activity to see how to do a better job of managing the ecosystem. So that's typically what's done. There's a problem with that though. If it's a public agency that owns that resource, or if there's people who use the resource frequently, they want to be involved. And who's to say what the right answer is? Who's to say if those resource managers know what the problem really is? And so we have what we call collaborative adaptive management. And that's a process where a number of stakeholders are involved, and they sit around the table together and they talk about what's the problem, what could be the answers, what are some ways we might experiment with managing the system. So it's really the same process, it's just a greater number of people involved in doing that process, collaborative adaptive management. It's easy for citizens to be involved, but they may not hold the same kind of power that the scientists have, because really they're not in charge and they don't have expertise. So there's some problems with collaborative adaptive management as well. And what they really need is a good facilitator. That's where environmental educators come into the picture. Environmental educators can help facilitate the group discussion, they can provide clarity, information, they can help make sure all the stakeholders are engaged together, and help facilitate a decision-making process. Because managers and scientists may not have the skills to do those things. Those are skills of social scientists or environmental educators, right? And so you might be thinking, well, I don't know if I can do that either, because it could be conflict, there could be all sorts of problems involved, and that's not really what I do. But here's a secret. There's a process that you can use to give you some ideas about how to do this effectively. And it's called the reasonable person model. So in this model, there's 3 components that help create environments and supportive systems that will enable citizens and participants to feel like they're making a difference and they're becoming more reasonable. And those 3 things are model building, and that means that people are sharing their ideas about the problem and the solutions and developing a mental model that's more similar among each other. There's also a component called meaningful action, and that means there's something they can do. And that something is kind of obvious in collaborative adaptive management, because the something is the experiments and the monitoring and the making recommendations about how to manage the ecosystem. The third component, which is also important, is called being effective. And that means that the process is actually making the model building effective and the meaningful action effective. So people are working together to create an environment and an atmosphere that allows them to share information, equalizing the power that exists in the agency. Maybe they're asking questions, maybe they're sharing information, maybe they're collecting information together, data gathering. So all this works together to create a more meaningful and effective process of adaptive management because it's collaborative, because people are working together. So remember those springs. There's an organization that manages the springs who has created Springs Basin working groups. And those working groups are opportunities for scientists to make presentations to the managers and for interested citizens and environmental advocates to be there in the same room and to listen to the same information that the scientists and resource managers are sharing, which means they can be more effective at launching their awards programs or creating posters or making demonstrations or educational programs because they're all working together. They're getting to know each other, they're sharing the same mental model, they're becoming more effective at the work that they're doing, and they're creating meaningful actions that will help protect the springs in the long run. Even though these Springs Basin working groups were not designed to actually solve problems, they are the people that the public respects, and the public goes to these Spring Basin working groups and says, tell me what's going on. I trust you to give me the right information. So they're becoming a really effective way at engaging people in helping to solve the problem with the springs. So here we have an opportunity of adaptive management being more collaborative because more citizens and stakeholders are involved in the process, and educators are actually facilitating the process of these working groups, creating an atmosphere for people to work together and providing meaningful actions. Social learning is occurring, community is being developed, and the public sees this as a useful thing to do. So here are some techniques environmental educators can use to be engaged with their community, their scientists, their resource managers, and other interested citizens to help solve problems in the environment and help create a more effective process to engage people in collaborative adaptive management. I hope you can use these ideas as you think about ways to be engaged with your community. There's some discussion questions online, and there's all sorts of folks that you can talk to and engage with. So good luck.